Hey Gareth, how are you?
Alfie, I'm very well. How are you?
I'm good, good. Well, I'm good-ish. I've had a cold for about a week now, so excuse me if my voice is a bit weird or funny on this podcast. If you can't hear me for any reason, just wave.
Yeah. No, it's actually now you've said that. We obviously don't see each other in person that much, sadly. But the last time we did a couple of weeks ago, we were in London, weren't we, running our course, and you were worried at that point. So that's a couple of weeks ago now as well, isn't it? So it's still,
Yeah,
I
that's
think
it. And
you
it's just
you'd winter
stuck. It's just
cold.
not gone away.
Yeah. Touch wood, I've managed to avoid any of that so far this winter, but we'll see. But yeah, hopefully you're
Lucky
feeling better
you.
soon. I'll fill in if your voice goes. I'll just try and.
Yeah, well, I can do sign language. It's not a problem. Right. Today, this is going to be a weirdish one
Yeah.
because the flip side of this is talked about a lot,
Yeah.
but this particular thing isn't discussed as much. And it's probably because people don't experience it as much or see it as a positive versus the flip side. But what I'm talking about is underservicing,
Yeah.
right? So we can talk about it, define it, and kind of go into it because we see it quite a bit, don't we, Gareth, in our day to day work with agency owners. So, yeah, it'd be good to talk about because I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that are wondering what is it with underservicing? I get overservicing, but what about this underservicing thing? What's this about? So,
Totally,
are
yeah.
you up for that?
Absolutely. We briefly discussed this, haven't we, as a topic, of course, but then, and
Yeah.
I think I know which angle we're both going to come from, but we've not gone into detail, so people will witness the different views live here, and that'll be quite interesting. People listening to this generally, I would think and hope, would be familiar, as you've just said, with over servicing. But is it just worth just covering that just quickly? We're not talking about that, but just to sort of set the scene. So
Yeah,
we're talking
absolutely.
over servicing, we're talking about.
Yeah. So when we talk about over servicing, generally what we're saying is if you've got a brief from a client says, I want this, 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 and this. You go away, you price it, and you come back and say, this is the price for the deliverables, for the outcome, whatever it is, however you price, whatever pricing strategy you use, but this is the price, right? So now the client has got it in their head. They've anchored to that price. They pay you, they sign the SOW. That's now your fee to get the job done. When we say over servicing, we're saying, well, the work to actually deliver that service has exceeded the fee. So if you said it will take, this much resource, this much input to get the outcome we're looking for, well, over servicing is when you exceed that plan, that you had for that fee. So that's how over servicing goes. So some people do fixed fee pricing, and typically, depending on how they do their fixed fee, the ideal way, in my opinion, would be, they take all the resource it'll take to deliver. So the people basically attach whatever profitable rates to those people, come up with a fee based on, the time, the rates, and therefore the fee. And then whatever that is, you put some people call it markup, you add margins to it, however you want to put it. But you basically increase that fee you've come up with to increase your margins. And that's now your fixed fee. To kind of put numbers behind it, if that fixed fee comes out at 100,000 and it's going to take you a team of 10 to deliver that work at whatever time, if you use a team of 15, for example, even if it's the same time, you're most likely going to overservice. Or if you use that same 10 and the time exceeds what you had planned, you're overservicing. Essentially, what you planned doesn't match the fee you've received, therefore you're overservice. So that's broadly the concept of overservicing.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's fair to say, is it not, that over-servicing is absolutely that, but it can come in many guises, can't it? Over-servicing can appear um, because the client asks for more scope, more work than they originally specified. Uh,
Hmm.
is common, isn't it? Or it can come, as I've experienced it, I'm sure you have, with agencies where the client's not necessarily asked for more, but the agency internally has got um, giddy with what they're doing, and very interested in what they're doing. Particularly, I can see this particularly in web development, well, actually even in creative as well, where people actually, no, you know what, I want to polish this.
Yeah.
It's to a level where this is what the clients asked for, but no, we're going to go over and above because we're excited about it, we like it, we enjoying the work, or we just want to impress the client. So, and sometimes it's a combination of both, isn't it? And my clients asking for more, um, agencies saying, rather than saying no, I mean that's not within the scope, they're saying, well, yeah, okay, go on then, and getting a bit carried away as well. So the over servicing can happen, and I think on over servicing, we've both seen, haven't we, that it's a sort of silent killer, isn't it? In a way, people don't you don't see it of witness of. You might understand, you clearly understand what you're doing day to day, but you don't see the financial impact of that often, until you look at the month end accounts. And sometimes, let's be honest, agency owners don't always interrogate the month end accounts, or the probably more the month end commercial reports, rather than just the P&L, isn't it? That shows up in. So the commercial reports, either they don't have them or they don't interrogate them as much as they should. So months tick by with hours racking up, and over servicing becomes sort of quite endemic in the agency, unless they've got somebody like you, Alfie, by the side, who looks at those, or drags out those commercial reports and says, hang on a minute, guys, look at what's happening here.
Yeah, that's so true. You said web developers, you said creatives, that typically, tends to be the culprits in these situations.
Yeah,
And I think it stems from, broadly speaking, agency people, so the delivery team always want to do their best, which is good, right? That's what you want from your team. But they always need to remember that it is a business still. There are commercial elements to delivering that work. You can't just do what you want because you're trying to get the best outcome and all of this sort of stuff, which is great, but you need to make sure it's still profitable. And over servicing means you're reducing the margin, because the over servicing relates to the cost. So you've charged a fee based on X cost. When that cost goes up, unless the fee goes up with it, the margin is going down, right? So that's the thing. So where a lot of delivery people, or the founders even sometimes, want to really impress the client, they forget the commercials and they go above and beyond, right?
yeah,
So that's where it stems from. And I think, like you mentioned, even some people we've worked with, they're really not focused on it. Like you say, they don't look at the commercials, they don't look at over servicing reports or time reports or utilization or any of those kind of things. They're just focused on delivery. So it's so easy. But what I will say is, I always, like, when I do commercial training, I always say to people, learn to differentiate scope creep from over servicing.
yeah,
And what I mean by that is, for me, scope creep is what you described there, where the client comes back and they're always asking for more. So you created a scope of work, you created your budget, you came up with a fee, and then the client keeps saying, "Oh, can we just, right?" And it's always, pushing the barriers a bit and increasing the deliverables, right? But meanwhile, that's not priced into your budget. So that's the definition of scope creep. For lack of a better term, it's on the client. It's the client's fault,
yeah,
right? Scope creep. However, overservicing tends to be the agency's fault, tends to be on the agency. This is where what you talked about again, there's a standard, they've reached that standard, they've delivered, the client is happy with what they've delivered, but they keep doing more and more and more and more and more, and that cost keeps going up and up and up, and they're not getting a fee for it. So that's an internal thing, right? So that is over service. Or sometimes it could be, incompetence, right? It could be someone in the team, or someone's new in the team and they just do more than they should do, whatever it is. It tends to be an internal thing. So the cost is going up because the agency is doing something or not doing something, where the scope creep kind of comes from the client telling the agency, do more than you've priced the work to be, So that to me, so if they're able to tell the difference,
Yeah.
then they can, when they identify over servicing, they can go, okay, this portion of it is scope creep. This is because the client has asked for more. And that is easier to go back to the client and say, we want a bigger budget because blah, blah, blah. But whereas it is an internal problem, then it's something the agency needs to fix. It isn't right for them to go back to the client and say, oh, we messed up on a few things. Can you give us more money? That's just not going to happen. So, telling the two apart is important.
I like that. That's really good. Yeah, it's really good advice. I think on over servicing, whereas you're right, you said just now, it can come from the or be facilitated by the founder, can't it? By the founders.
Mhm, mhm.
I think particularly creative people founding it. I'm not
Yeah,
blaming that. I understand it, but the desire to always impress and do more and do better work is admirable, isn't it? And when that happens, when we over service a client, of course, people say to us, and they'll say to us that they're doing that because they'll get more work, won't they? Of course, it makes perfect sense that if they over service the client and do much more work on one project, then other work is bound to come through the door, isn't it? Because like going into a
mhm.
restaurant and when the waiter says actually the desserts and the wine are free, we always go back, don't we, the next day? Not always, not all.
Yeah,
It's sometimes a bit of a false suggestion. I think that I'm a big one for customer service, but people that say that to us doesn't always follow, does it? That we give if we are perceived to be giving away more than what we originally agreed. If people do come back, then clients often come back but want more for less, don't they? Which is a phrase
yeah,
we're all hearing, or a discount, or the same level of
yeah,
service but for the same price,
yeah,
albeit maybe
yeah,
different type of project. So that's the danger.
yeah. And this is why typically we say agencies need to focus more on value than, just doing more, right? So more on value, less on volume,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of agencies think, oh, if we do more work, we're keeping the client happy. The client is going to come back. Not necessarily, because just because you're doing a lot of things doesn't mean you're hitting the right spot. Do you know what I mean? As far as the client is concerned, it doesn't mean that they're getting maximum value from what you're doing, right? So, for example, if an agency focuses on value and focuses on value when they're pricing, then as long as they hit they deliver that value, the price that comes with it matches, if that makes sense. So they're charging value pricing based on what they're delivering, and that is exactly what adds value to the client. The price can outweigh the deliverable, but the client doesn't see it that way because they're getting value from it. However, if the agency is focused on volume, then all they're doing is just working more and doing more things and doing this and doing that. And then at the end of the day, the client might go, okay, cheers, we've got all these things, but really they haven't got any value out of it. And for that reason, they won't come back again because they didn't get the value, right? It doesn't matter that you doubled the amount of time or effort that you had priced in. They just won't come back because they haven't got that value from it. So for me, it's all about value, and that leads into pricing, that leads into client satisfaction, all of it, right? It's all about the value.
Yeah, totally. No, totally. So that's over servicing, and we've just sort of summarised some of the key sort of points on that. But we talk about, but people will be generally familiar with that, and because it's a real and present danger, isn't it? It's something that we come across a lot, talk about with agencies a lot. Something that many agencies are very aware of that, but struggle to
Mm.
do something about it because it's sort of just in their creative psyche or whatever it might be to over deliver. So that's a huge and common challenge. But to come to the actually to the point of this particular podcast. So I said to you earlier that I see a lot of over servicing. Of course, we both do. But I'm increasingly, not because it's a trend, just because the more agencies I talk to and work with and sort of experience, I seem to be seeing more of it where I've come across the opposite, where I've looked at maybe actually tend to be more the retainer based agencies, in my experience, the sort of performance marketing agencies, not all of them by any stretch of the imagination, but the odd one or two where I've come across, I've seen these are very profitable businesses. That's
Mm,
good, isn't it? I'm not trying to destroy that, but when I look under the hood of the finances and the commercials, I'm looking for why is this agency profitable when
mm,
quite a few agencies of their ilk that aren't profitable. What are they? I'm looking for good things, really. I'm looking for what are they doing that is better, and how what can we learn and what can we improve on here, and also learn from for people elsewhere that this is profitable. And I have seen instances recently and in the past as well, actually. Although perhaps I've not raised it then as much, but I've seen instances where I've looked at why are they profitable. Well, I've looked down their client list and I've looked at their sort of commercial reports and I've seen what time is going into servicing each of these individual clients. And I've seen a different picture from what we've just talked about. I've seen a picture where actually the fees on a retainer basis are X, and the hours that are generally going into work servicing that client are a lot lower than they should be. That each client is particularly profitable because the fee was, I guess, based on say 50 hours a month, and it looks like 30 hours is actually going into this client. And I suppose the point of the debate today is to say, this is a good thing. I'm not trying to. Nobody is employing me to go in and change that dynamic. I'm also something in it worries me because
mm,
sometimes I see a list of clients and there is a couple of big over servicing ones in there where there's more hours on on the clock and it's not as profitable. And then there's a few that are far less. And sometimes I look at it and go, that's a bit unfair. That's how that's a sort of if I was all those clients and I was exposed to that spreadsheet, I'd say, hang on a minute, why are they getting a lot of hours and I'm paying maybe not as much, but a fair chunk of the fee each month as that other client, but they're getting twice the attention, it would seem.
mhm,
So I just wonder what you thought of that and what I think of it. I think well, the first thing to say, just before you sort of give your view, is that I am aware that by raising that there will be people out there listening to this and say, it's not all about hours, though, Gareth. We need to get away from hours. It's not about selling hours. It's about value, as you've just said. And I accept that. I understand that to a degree. But I think we are both in the same camp of um, tracking hours utilization and productivity in a business, not necessarily pricing by the hour. But we're both of a camp in the camp still, as we sit, of um, it is usually valuable to construct your pricing around a baseline of the inputs, which are still the hours. So whether the client knows they're being paid by they're being charged by the hour or not is I'm not particularly that interested in that today. I get that point. It's more the hang on a minute, we've got a fee up here, and we're delivering on a level of input that seems to be massively out of kilter.
mm,
Discuss.
mm. In discussing this, I will have to touch on pricing because it kind of goes hand in hand, right? To me, it all depends on how the scope was put together and the pricing was done. Because, okay, let's take the example you're giving where you said retainers, right? You see it more frequently in retainers. A retainer, if we're defining it by what it should be, because when I first got into, you know, commercial finance in agencies, retainers were retainers, you know, like you would get in a law firm or anywhere else.
Yeah, sure.
And by that definition, a retainer is you're doing set deliverables every month or every quarter, whatever it is, for the same amount of money, the same amount of fee,
Yeah,
right? So it is deliverables for a fee. Now, with retainers, you know, if we're going by this definition of retainers, the hours don't matter. So we're back to the value side of things, right? So if what the client wants from us is X, and internally, like we clearly agree, Gareth, you build that retainer based on hours, and that's an internal thing, right? That's for your agency to know that this is the total cost it'll take for us to get to this fee. Because if you don't do that, then how do you know what fee is profitable and what isn't? So if you've done the original exercise of coming up with the resource, so the time versus rate people, hopefully with some additional margin on top, that's now your monthly retainer. So, in the example you've given of if I were to look at that retainer and the cost, so the resource that I had budgeted to come up with that fee, I'm not hitting it. So, initially, I had said, for example, I'd use 5 people doing 10 hours a month, right? If I look at it at the end of the month and it's those 5 people doing 3 hours in that month, I'll then look at it and go, what is the client getting out of this? Are they getting what they want from the monthly service that we're delivering? If the answer is yes, I don't care about that underservicing because the reality is the client wasn't paying for hours and the client never saw the hours. All they saw was X amount of fee that we're charging them every month to get this job done. So is the job getting done? Yes, great. Internally, if we're doing less hours, to me, better. Key thing is, again, is the client happy? Is the client satisfied? Is the value being achieved? Yes. I've got no problem with underservicing because that increases my profitability. Now, the problem comes in where, like I said, this was the old school way of retainer, in my opinion, the right way of doing a retainer. But what people do these days, because I see it a lot, they'll say, oh, we've got a retainer with a client. But what that means is the client pays us X amount of money every month, and then we have to work X amount of hours to basically hit that fee. Now, if those people are underservicing, then it is a problem because the client at some point is going to ask for the hours because they're going to go, oh, especially, and I've seen this happen when they get new procurement people or procurement are trying to find cost savings somewhere, they'll analyze all the books and kind of go, oh, hold on. These people said they were going to do X amount of hours for the fee. They're doing half of that. They're underservicing. Let's get some money back. So to me, as long as the pricing is done properly, I've got no problem with what we're calling underservicing here because the value's being achieved for the fee that they're getting every single month, But if you've promised the client a set amount of hours and that's how you're calling, that's what you're doing as a retainer, then absolutely. If you're underservicing, then that is a problem.
Yeah,
So I know it's kind of a long-winded way of explaining it, but to me, it isn't clear cut in terms of is it good, is it bad? I just feel
yeah,
it depends on the circumstances, right? If you get it right, if you price properly, I see nothing wrong with underservicing because that underservicing is only an internal measure, it's an internal metric. The client doesn't know. All the client cares about is the value that they're getting, the output that they're getting. What do you think?
yeah. I like the way you've illustrated that. I think it's a really good way of explaining it. And I don't disagree. I certainly think
Mm,
if an agency is in a situation where they've priced the retainer based on a set number of hours, 50 hours a month, and the client knows that, and the client knows that that's what they're paying for, and if 50 hours each month are recorded and done by the agency, then essentially everybody should be happy, shouldn't they? If only 40 hours are being done of the 50 hours, the client might not know that unless they ask. And if they do ask and we don't have a good reason why that's the case, then that's a big problem, isn't it? And that's where I think we are, or not we, but if that is occurring, the agency is fundamentally shortchanging the client, isn't it? That's dangerous
yeah,
territory. Um, but on the other end of as you've rightly described, if there's the hours aren't explicit, but it's about value or achieving an objective,
hmm
and we priced it based on sort of level of input that we thought we would need to, or the agency priced it on a level of input they thought they would need to achieve that objective, and yet they can achieve it on a lower input, lower level of input, lower level of hours, or productivity or input into the work. then that's absolutely fine, isn't it? That's good for us as a business, or good for the agency as a business. That's, again, just for the record in this podcast, I'm not suggesting for a second that I'm in the business of depressing agency profit margins here. Though I'm in quite the opposite. That's not where I'm at. But so I like the way you've sort of drawn that out. But I wonder where is there somewhere in the middle, which is the bit that worries me. So let's discount the hours
Mhm,
payment by hours element of it. But I wonder. I sometimes I think I see somewhere in the middle where clients are not necessarily paying hour by hour, and they are paying for a result. But they in the middle is where they're getting the results. So ultimately, on performance marketing in particular, their key result really is about sales, isn't it? Their key result is
mhm,
their sales from D2C brands on websites that are being driven by a number of things. But let's take ads, digital ads for one example. And the ads are performing, but the sales are overperforming. This brand is very popular, very relevant. I won't try and think of it or choose one, but it's a brand that is very much in demand, and this business is doing well. So in the business, of the client side is everybody's reasonably happy, and nobody's really putting the agency under scrutiny because they are playing their part. But
mhm,
in this middle, I'm wondering whether if that agency is showing a lot of profit, could they be giving even more and not delivering the level of inputs they could do? Is that false economy, as in they could be pushing that client to even higher levels if they wanted to, and actually no, they're not, they're diverting resource elsewhere? And is that longer term would be a longer term a better play, because if something does happen to the client's sales, and fingers do start to point, or procurement departments or commercial people start to think, hang on, what's going on here? The agency is left suddenly in quite a sticky position where it's been taking quite a lot of profit for quite a long while, not maybe adding the value that it could have done. And now suddenly the relationship is under question, the performance is under question, and that client is in jeopardy or even lost.
yeah, I would say, like, in this instance, if the like, again, using the performance marketing, if the ads are delivering and the client is seeing sales, to me, and this is just my commercial brain, I can't think any other way.
Yeah.
If the if the client is getting the value that they want out of it, so the sales are coming based on the ads. For us, the profit that we're banking, again, this is me commercially, that's our business.
Mm,
We're not sharing that with the client.
mm,
So as far as the client knows, they're getting their sales, they're making their profits. They don't know what we're making as a business. We're out here to make profit, right? The extra bit that you're talking about, where you're saying, we could be doing more, in my opinion, everybody could always be doing more. But I feel that more should come at a different price, right? So if what we agreed is that we'll do so many ads, and you get X amount of sales from it, and you're getting that sales, and we're doing the ads, and hey, you're happy and everybody's happy. I struggle with the idea of just doing extra. Now, as a one off, I think that's fine. If you said to the client, hey, it's the year end, I'm just saying random stuff. It's the year end, and we thought you could benefit from this, so we've gone ahead and done this for you. Great. Because really, as an agency, we've done the numbers. This particular thing we're doing doesn't cost us, much, by way of profit and all that stuff. Great. But what I struggle with is making a habit of just exceeding for the sake of exceeding, because that is then eaten into your profits, right? And the worst part of it, forget the fact that it's eating into your profit, is the client doesn't realize the difference
mm.
between this extra bit you're doing and what you had priced for them. As far as they're concerned, this is now the norm, right? Because I forget how this saying goes. It's something like, after a while, expectation becomes entitlement or something like that. I can't
Yeah,
remember, but basically, in a nutshell, it's basically if you're doing something as a perk for someone, in time that becomes a requirement. The person sees it as this is what you should be doing for me. So that's what I worry about is where agencies turn around and say, okay, I think we could do this extra bit for the client. We could do more. You start doing more, and the client then thinks that the fee that they're paying you is for that more. That's now lumped into, that's now your new unofficial scope of work.
yeah,
And then if anything were to change on your side, for example, your costs go up, you have to promote the people that were working on that project. You're not going to get any additional fee because you're already offering it to the client. So that means your margins then get affected by this change in your cost base. So for me, I feel it's all well and good to do, go above and beyond as a one off. That's great. But if you want to do it on an ongoing basis, to me, that has to come at a price. You need to do a separate scope and get paid for that, right? Because I can't get out of the mindset of we are still a business, and the aim of a business is one to make sure the client is happy, absolutely, but it is also to make a profit because that's how you grow your business. So yeah, that's just how I see it. I mean, you've run an agency before, Gareth. So do you have any live examples? I'm sure you do of how you dealt with this sort of situation.
yeah. I mean, it's interesting because as we're talking now, because I'm thinking, I mean, we're both, like as I say, we're both in the same game here, as in agency profitability. But we come from, yes, I ran and owned an agency, but I also, as in my by trade, I'm an account handler. I'm a client service
Hmm.
person. So by naturally in my career, much of my career was, I always considered it to be, of course, working for the agency, but being the client's voice in the agency, actually being the
Hmm.
person that before the work was presented to the client, oversaw it and decided whether it was on brief or and good enough and what the client wanted and what the client had briefed. And also kept control of the hours and the inputs to some degree so that I wasn't having a bad conversation with the client about, I'm sorry, we've run over massively on this and we need to try and charge you some more. And you, of course, on the commercial side, and I guess that's what it boils down to, really. As an agency owner, I can and have dealt with both sides, and as an agency advisor laterally. But it was, I guess, this is the reason for this conversation. Really, it put my old account handling brain, which ultimately was about making the client profitable for the business, but equally about
Hmm.
retaining them and making sure that they were happy. And sort of kicks in sometimes when I look at retainer business and think there's a very so there's that dynamic going on. But actually, again, I didn't plan this today, but the way that you've just described that now makes me reflect on actually the first bit of this podcast, which was talking about over. There's a fine line between over servicing and actually doing what you said or think you were going to do. That middle ground that I was talking about there, there is a very fine line, but I wasn't really saying that we should go above and beyond. I was saying maybe if we're not delivering to the level that we think we should be doing, then
Hmm.
should we just take the profit and sit back, or should we say no? In order to retain this client and potentially grow it and improve their performance so that they're even happier than they are now, we should do so. Just basically. So let's say again try and get away from hours. Let's say there's a portion of delivery input into our monthly retainer and a portion of strategic input, however that
Hmm.
manifests itself, whether it's in hours or people or whatever. And let's say as an example, not a live one, but just as a theoretical example, the client is very happy, the client's performing, the ads are performing, whatever, but the actually internally, I know that really the strategy element is minimal. The strategy guys are off doing something else because they've just said to this client that we've got here, it's working. The execution, just do the stuff on the execution. They're happy. It's less input. We'll make more money. We don't need much strategy on this account. And let's say that in some way that conversation's happened in the agency. As the agency owner, part of me would be very happy with that because I'd be looking at my spreadsheets and my accounts saying, great, I'm making a lot of money. But part of me would be thinking, hang on, what happens when somebody else comes along to this client as another agency and says,
Mm,
you know, you've not changed your, so you're doing okay, you're doing well, but we just had a look at your ads or whatever, and you've not changed your strategy in 12 months, or
mhm, mhm,
your strategy is a bit flawed because
mhm,
currently, you know, something's happened or something's changed, or we're seeing the outputs here, and you know, so have you not thought of changing your pivoting your strategy slightly? And me, as
mhm.
the incumbent agency, would find that I might be in a situation where I look back and say, well, we hadn't done, no, because our strategists were over working on another client. They weren't bothered about this one. We were just reaping the benefits, and so there's that fine line, isn't there? I don't know whether that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Not over servicing, but actually we're sitting back and you know we're just sort of letting it go. And the client, in many instances, in those situations, actually, the clients I'm thinking about, they're probably very happy now. They're not causing the agency any issues. They're not on the phone or emailing the agency saying we've got issues. They're very happy, but they're happy now. And so I guess it's my account client success brain thinking, yeah, but I want them to be happy for the next 3, 4, 5 years. And if
Yeah.
we're in some way diverting resources, and taking profit now, then maybe that's not totally the right strategy. Don't know if that makes any sense, but that's where I was.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense in this scenario you've given here, because in this scenario you've given, I
Mm,
do agree that yes, you should be, because in the scenario I was thinking about, we're delivering the value. You know,
yes.
there's not much. Obviously, like I say, there's always more you could do, but really you don't need to. You're delivering it. So in my head, in my example, we are staying on top of the strategy and we are doing all of that stuff. It's just we're not doing much more than that,
Yeah.
right? But in this example, let's focus on this. I would say absolutely, you're future proof in the bit. You're not future proof in the business if you're not thinking ahead and thinking about strategy that means that the client is in the game for longer or you're covering their blind sides. So absolutely, I would say, yeah,
Yeah.
in this example, definitely we should be doing that. But again, to me, this constitutes that one off because the strategy is not going to be ongoing. It isn't going to be part of your monthly service delivery, if that makes sense, right? You're not going to require those strategists as frequently as the execution of the actual campaign or project or whatever it is. So I feel you can do that. I think the key thing here would be, and it's something I talk about a lot. I actually did a post last week or two about this, and that's just understanding the margins that you've got in your numbers.
Mm,
That is the critical point, all of this stuff that we're talking about,
mm,
because we've been talking about the fact that the agency is making a profit, 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 profit. If you don't know what that profit is
yeah.
and the profit that exists in your pricing, then in a situation like this, you could end up then giving all that margin away by trying to do more. But if, let's say, in your scenario, you had a commercial person working with you and you come to that commercial person and you go, oh, look, shouldn't we be doing more, by way of strategy to make sure we retain this client and we're doing this, that, and the other? What the commercial person should be able to do is then go look at the pricing and go, okay, based on what we priced and what we're delivering, we're achieving, for example, 80% profit margin. Are you happy with 60%? Because at 60%, we can actually get more strategy in
Yeah.
and get this work done and get them to that point and blah, blah, blah. And any business would be happy with 60%. So you could turn around and go, yeah, 60% is perfect. Let's go ahead and do it. Right. But if they look at it and they kind of go, okay, we're making 50%, that strategy will require 45% or will erode 45% of that margin. Probably not worth doing without going back to the client and saying, look, here's some added stuff we could be doing. Here's a fee for it. Do you know what I mean? So I think understanding the profit margin, so visibility of the margins and the cost base and all of that stuff helps with this situation.
Yeah.
Because yeah, absolutely, you can give some of that margin away. It's funny we're talking about. I was reading the autobiography of Steve Jobs. Now, Steve Jobs was your typical creative when he ran Apple, and he was just, let's do the best, let's make these products as beautiful. Many people don't know this, but when Steve Jobs was running Apple, I don't know if it's still the case, but apparently the inside of your iPhone or iPad or whatever was just as beautiful as the outside. Many phones, they just do whatever because no one's ever going to take the phone apart and look inside. So he just wanted perfection. Certain the smallest of things, he would put 10 people on it to get it to perfection. But what that meant was that Apple wasn't profitable at a certain point, and that's why he got kicked out.
Yeah.
And if you look at Apple today, they're not as focused on those minor details and that making the customers extra happy. For God's sakes, you get a phone, they don't even put a charger in there anymore
Yeah.
or any earbuds. You just get it. You have to buy everything else. But at the end of the day, people buying it are still getting the value from it, right? So they don't complain and they'll go back next, or maybe they do complain, but they still go back to it, right? Apple know that they could be putting a charger in there, or they could put new headphones in, or whatever it is. Even the case is just ugly and just, nothing to it. They could do all these things, but they're already hitting the value level for their
Yeah.
customers.
Yeah.
Every customer is happy to get that iPhone as it is, without that charger, without all this stuff, and they're making the extra profit. So if they wanted to do any extra bits, because they know their numbers, they know their cost base, they could easily look at their P&L, look at all of their reports, and go, okay, we can afford to give away 5% of our margin to bring back the chargers or whatever it is. So I feel the situation to kind of get everything right and have everyone happy, the client and the agency, understanding that margin, understanding the cost and whatever can help you achieve both of what we're talking. So the middle ground that you
Yeah.
were talking about,
Yeah.
Gareth, I think that's where it comes in.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Actually, the Apple analogy has sort of prompted me another couple of thoughts, actually, and actually on the over servicing point. I have talked some time ago. I worked with an agency, and we were talking about over servicing, and I know nothing about code, but there is the issue on over servicing. We came to a sort of thought that the issue with over servicing was that their developers were. We used the analogy of a car, so they were steam cleaning the engine, the internal workings of an
Yeah.
iPhone, the code of the websites. Their developers, the website worked, it was fine, but their developers were spending a lot of time steam cleaning the engine or making sure the inside of the iPhone, making sure the code was tight, perfect, really good code. And that's a great thing, great principle, but they were spending a hell of a lot more time on these websites and charging a lot less for them than they needed to. So there's an
Mhm.
example of a parallel to that. That was an example of over servicing, and yeah, and
Yeah.
I think profitability. I think the other thing for me is on the Apple thing. That is a product business, and of course, and where you've got millions of customers. Just my thing is on a service business, which agencies still
Mhm.
are, where there's maybe 20 customers. You shouldn't give every customer a free charger, but equally you need to make sure you don't want to be making sure the each product you create, which could be a website for the sake of argument for each client, is
Mhm.
perfect and is steam cleaned. But you've got to make sure those 20 customers are happy. And I see with this under servicing point, I guess my fear underlying, as we've been talking, I've been thinking about it, is that some of these people that I see with this high profitability and under servicing issue or thing going on is that they often sort of say to me, "Well, the clients are happy," and I wonder whether is that really the case? Is that a myth?
Yeah.
Do they mistake
Yeah.
client silence as in being an issue with satisfaction? In
Yeah.
reality, they might be happy, but if somebody points the finger elsewhere and from elsewhere and say, "Hang on a minute, what are you doing with your ad strategy here?" or "Why are you doing 10 ads when you should be doing six?" or whatever the thing is. I'm not an ads guy either. That's my favorite. And also, I think actually with something we've not covered, which I thought we might, but I'll just throw it in there as well. Sometimes I see with or a worry in this situation where the spreadsheets, our commercial spreadsheets, the performance of ours to the fee, but are they actually right? Are they not? And I'm not just talking about this spreadsheet at the time recording issue, which is always an issue, but also are we genuinely putting in those hours on that client and putting some hours elsewhere, or are we just you? Or is the founder might not be doing this, but underneath their team, are they just saying, well, this client holds should have 10 hours a week, and so I'll put 10 hours a week to that, but I actually only do 6. I do another
Mm,
4 on this other client over here that is a more of a challenge or is struggling or whatever, and therefore we're robbing Peter to pay Paul. It's more about the future of these businesses actually, rather than the present. For me, it's more about the if they're extremely profitable, good luck to them, fantastic. But can we
yeah,
replicate that for a new client and achieve that level of profitability by doing the same things and ultimately
mm,
not putting as much input as what we might think they need, that where so that
yeah,
we achieve 80% of that profitability on the new client? Or is it just this
mm,
old crew that we've got that are sort of coming
yeah.
with us, and that's what I'm playing with.
Yeah, I hear that. And I think again it's back to, what I said about, focusing on the value side of things. And
Yes.
maybe I'm using the term value too much. Client satisfaction, if you want to call it that, right? Because you're right. The hours don't always equate to a client being satisfied. So just because you've hit the whatever hours it is that you planned for that project, or people who don't like hours, whatever input you had planned for that client, doesn't mean that the client is satisfied or they're getting the value from it, right? And if we're talking about retention, which is what you mentioned that you're concerned about, so retention and growing, then I think the focus on the value is more important, and that sits to me outside of the what you're seeing on spreadsheets or your tool, your ops tool.
Yeah.
That is more a conversation that you need to be having with these clients on an ongoing basis, right? As a founder, or as a leader, or whoever, to go, how are we performing? Like, what do you think about this? How did that project go? What is, and internally, did we hit these KPIs? When we first signed with this client, we said we're going to deliver this, and this. And these were kind of like the value propositions. Oh, have we hit these? Have we exceeded it? Those sorts of things. It's never as much as, obviously, I'm a numbers guy. Numbers don't always tell you everything. For me, I feel numbers kind of give you an indication for you to then go and do some investigation, right?
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the numbers and going, there's something wrong here.
Yeah.
The numbers can't tell me exactly who or what, but they're giving me the indication that I need to do some digging into what's going on here. We started off talking about overservicing and even the underservicing. Both are just symptoms of something,
Yeah.
right? They're not problems in themselves. They're symptoms. They're showing you that, look, if it's over servicing, people are doing more than we thought they were going to do. Now, it is your responsibility to go in and figure out why they're doing that. Again, is it the scope creep, or is it that we're messing up internally? Or if it's underserviced, we're not delivering as much in terms of input as we forecasted or planned out. Why is that? Is it that we're just super efficient now? Is it that, hey, that new AI tool we started using means that we're more efficient and we don't need to hit those exact input numbers? Or what is it, right? And then that will then give you the answer you need to make a decision on, should we be doing more because we're under servicing here? And to your point, Gareth, we're probably not going to grow or retain this client. We need to do more. Or is it that, hey, that AI tool has made us even exceed all these, what we thought we could do as humans, and we don't need to do any more, So all of these numbers, all of these things, the overserves, the underserves, are just symptoms of a problem that we need to go and do some work to figure out. So it's never black and white,
No,
you know.
no, it isn't. But I love that. I think that's absolutely spot on. Probably a good place to to finish as well. But I do just to support that. I think what you just said, Alfie. I think the yeah, as you say, you are the numbers man, but equally you've just sort of clarified it in my mind. My concern is it really is with some people. They're looking at their reports, their systems, or their spreadsheets, and saying, "Yeah, we're profit. Look at this. This is great. We're profitable across the board." But if they are, but why? If the reason is because we're working in this way, we've nailed this. We're experts. Or we've got this AI tool now that's doing much of the work for us, and therefore that's reduced time and input on our part significantly. Therefore, it's much more profitable than it was last 12 months. Um, and the picture behind the numbers stacks up with the numbers themselves. That's great, isn't it? Long may that continue. But if when you dig underneath, that's not the case. You can't identify the sort of commercial advantage that you've got that's doing that, or some of the things that people are saying to you don't stack up with the numbers really, and you know, is the client happy? Well, we don't know really. We've not spoken to them for 12 months, but you know, right, okay, or the client, yeah, the client's performing well, they are happy. As I said earlier, is our influence over that success commensurate with the fee of our retainers? Are our retainers of a value that is reflected in that success, or actually no, they're successful anyway. We're just riding on the back of somebody selling fidget spinners or whatever the hell the latest thing is. I'm sure that's not the latest thing anymore, but whatever. You know, the latest.
To Gareth, get with the times.
Yeah, I don't know what the latest. But you know what I mean. That no, so therefore that might be okay, but it's what are the things sitting behind the bigger picture, really, I suppose, isn't it? Not just the profitability. Interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was an interesting debate. I think it's useful.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. For me, I think sum it up on my part, on the commercial part, I think it's all about, again, one, having visibility, looking at your reports, understanding your margins, understanding your numbers, focusing on value versus just the hours or input or stuff. Focus on value, so client satisfaction and all of that stuff. And then I think just the last thing is just not being too rigid with anything, so not just looking at numbers and going, oh, numbers say this, it must be this. Just do some digging in, right, and understand what is behind it, because
Yeah,
numbers are just indicators,
yeah,
but the actual non-financial aspect is usually hidden behind those, and you
yeah,
need to figure those out. You need to have ask questions and speak to people, communicate in
yeah.
order to understand it a bit more, and then you can make the right decisions.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, if the retainers only work if no one looks too closely, they don't really work, do they? You know,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
work when actually no, but just client look away or people look away. We make very profitable, but that's fine. Then they're not really. I like to dig into these, not to find problems, but to
yeah,
make sure problems don't occur or make sure problems
yeah,
don't raise their heads.
yeah.
That is the big thing again from a retention client satisfaction point of view. Interesting.
Absolutely. You need to think ahead. You need to think ahead as a leader.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and especially in this climate, you know, again, it's for maybe a debate for another day, but I think I find, um, I would say the current times, and particularly maybe with more performance-based agencies, the churn is far
mm,
accepted. Churn of clients, however big or small it might be, it seems to be far more accepted than um, I would like, you know, in my running my agency, of course, we lost clients for all sorts of reasons. Of course, we did, and we weren't a performance marketing agency, but losing clients was devastating. We were mortified. We were, you know, that wasn't a great day. Whatever the reason was, oh my god, we've lost a client. Whereas now we seem to some people build churn into their forecasts and accept it as a sort of
yeah,
a thing that happens. Of course, it happens, but
yeah.
one of the reasons might be connected to this, or might not. But maybe that's next week's um, podcast.
Topic, right? Nice one, Gareth. Thank you so much for another brilliant episode.
Thanks,
And yeah,
Alfie.
look forward to talking about something just as interesting next time.
Yeah, good to see you as always.
Good to see you. Have a good one.
And you. Bye bye.